Hey guys, hope you're doing well. I want to thank all my new subscribers, and if you'll do me a favor, please subscribe and like the video. And in this video, I'm going to go over how to change the oil, the hydro oil in your John Deere Zero Turn. And real quick, let me discuss what happens in this particular video with this particular mower. It came in, they said the left side hydro was losing power. That was what was on the work order. Now, a lot of times people will confuse left and right. They'll think, okay, if I'm standing in front of it looking at it, and that's not, left and right, that's not how you do it. You always do it as if you're sitting on the mower. Then, your left hand is as if you're sitting on the mower. That's how the parts are described, and this will help you out if you're needing to order parts or whatever. But one thing I like to always do, especially if it's a hydro issue, I want to confirm which one I'm needing to look at. So what I did is I went and test cut with this unit, and it took about 30 minutes before I was showing any signs of a problem. Now, I did that for two reasons. One, so I could kind of more easily diagnose the issue of what it might need, but also confirm which side it is, because sometimes people will say, oh, it's the left side, and they're looking at it from the front, describing it as the left. The service writer writes it up like that, and then next thing I know, I'm working on the wrong side. So you just always want to confirm which one it is. So I go out and I test cut. The unit's doing fine. And if your mower's doing this, this video is probably going to help you out, not only how to change the oil, but maybe diagnose the issue. So after about 30 minutes of just really hard cutting, trying to get it as hot as possible, because that's when the issues are most likely going to rise to the surface, basically make themselves apparent. So I'm cutting really hard for 30 minutes, and then the left side starts losing a little bit of power. And then eventually it'll start kind of sounding like the buzzer on Family Feud when they guess the answer wrong. It's like, it'll start kind of sounding like that, like a and this one wasn't really bad, and it wasn't it wasn't as bad as I've seen a lot of them, where I'd have to tear into the hydro and maybe even replace the hydro if they're so bad. But this one was kind of just barely losing some power and starting to make some noise after about 30 minutes. So I put it up on some jack stands, and I looked at the oil, and I saw that the oil looked like it had a lot of water in it. So I've muted all the audio in the video, and I'm just going to kind of voice over as I go through this whole situation. I'm going to show you how to change the oil and also flush this one, because on the left side, I see, as I pull that filter out, I see a lot of trash and debris in the filter. So it became, I wanted to just go ahead and just try the oil change first to see if that would solve the issue. So I've let the unit cool down a little bit. I've got it up on some jack stands here. This is a Z915B with about 1,042 hours on it. So I look at the oil here, and it doesn't look good. It looks like it's got a lot of water in it. You can't tell on the camera, but you could see little areas of water. Not only just the color was bad, but you could tell water was in it. So here's how you change the oil. You got two plugs, and you can see them here. They're not bolts, they're plugs. You see they have the little washer there. There's one there, and then there's one right there. So those are your drain plugs. And I decided to move my jack, because originally I was going to pull this hydro. So now I've moved it, taken the tires off, and put the jacks underneath the hydro so I can drain this oil out better. And what you want to do is, it takes a 3/8 extension or a ratchet. I'm going to use a little small impact. I wouldn't recommend using that, but if you do, you want to put a lot of pressure into that. It's a plastic cap. So I'm just very carefully pulling it out, and this hydro, I let the oil, it's a little warm. It's not hot anymore. But you want to be really careful you don't take a bath right there and just pull that thing right out. So then there's your filter, and it has a little spring on it. And so don't just pull that thing right out. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm kind of just letting the oil come out a little faster, and I'm going to pull it out here in just a second and show you how fast it'll gush out. But I'm wanting to let all that oil drain out, and just the consistency of this oil, I can tell it's got a lot of water in it. I'm going to pull it out here and show you just how fast it'll gush out and give you a bath if you're not careful. And I'm also right now I'm noticing just all kinds of stuff in this filter. And so that's what's making me think that I can probably just get away with flushing this. And so see how fast it'll gush out. So I put the filter back in there just to kind of let it drain out. And so now I've drained all the oil. And one thing you want to make sure you do is remove that little O-ring. Sometimes it'll get stuck on the case, but your filter kit's going to come with a new one. We'll get to that in a moment. And it just slides over that plastic cap there. So remove the old one, and sometimes they stay stuck on there, so oftentimes I see people leave it on there and they put a new one on the cap and it starts leaking. But see all this grass and debris, I don't really know what it is. I don't know what that is. So I want to go ahead, now that I've got all the oil out from the filter, removing the filter, I'm going to remove these two drain plugs. Now this one's not going to have any oil come out because I've already drained the oil on that side, but you can drain that one before removing the filter. Now this one's going to have about a quart of oil in it. It's to the outside edge of the hydro. So you want to make sure you drain that as well. There's a good look inside. Alright, so here's the other side. I took the cap off, and you see how that O-ring stayed on there? Most people may not notice that, and they'll put the new O-ring on the new cap, and then it's going to leak. And you'll notice the spring goes out towards the cap. Some people try to put those filters in backwards. So on this one, while it still had oil in it, I went ahead and drained both the plugs real quick. It takes a 14 millimeter. So drain all that oil out. Now, this filter was a lot cleaner. It didn't have nearly as much debris in it, and this was the one that wasn't giving any problems. So what I decided to do is I'm going to flush this system. This is the one that was giving problems on the left side. So again, here's another look at the filters. Here's the one that was giving problems. Just all kinds of, I don't know what it was, maybe grass. So what I decided to do, I'm going to flush this out with diesel. And it holds, it says on the capacity here on the chart that it only holds about, a gallon or 1.1 gallon for the 900Rs. But it really holds about a gallon and a half in the long run of oil. But first thing I'm going to do, I've got the caps back in, the plugs back in, no filters. And I'm going to pour 1 gallon of diesel inside. And then what I'm going to do is let that flush some contaminants out. And I got some nice clean buckets here. That way I can see what comes out of it. If I see any metal, then I know I'm going to have to take this hydro out and do some repairs. But if I don't see any metal, I'm going to just try to get away with changing the oil, flushing it, changing the oil, and putting some new filters in it. And so I want to remove this really quick this time. It's not high. Like I said, don't crank it up with the diesel in it or run it. And I want it to just gush out and try to remove as much contaminants quickly as like that. And that gets a lot of that old nasty oil out of there. Now I'm going to show you what came out of here. And also you want to remove that other plug because now it's got about a gallon of, or I'm sorry, a quart of diesel on that. So I'm going to work my impact in here. My impact's taking quite a bath of diesel and oil, but it's okay. It's a DeWalt. It just keeps on going. I realized I was trying to tighten it, so that's why I'm screwing up here. So loosen that up, drain that out. And I'm going to show you the contaminants here in just a moment. So it doesn't look like a lot, but this is just the first flush. So had a lot of dirt and just looked like algae or something, gooey stuff.
And you see all that dirt. This was a perfectly clean bucket and clean diesel. And I don't know what in the world that is right there. So next up, what I'm going to do is, now to get the diesel out, I'm going to flush it out with some cheap hydraulic oil. Not the High Guard, just some really cheap hydraulic oil. This is going to flush the diesel out and also do a second flush on the hydros. And I didn't show you, but I also removed, I did the other side too, but it didn't have hardly any contaminants in it. So I don't know why this one side had so much buildup of dirt and debris. But you'll see some more stuff coming out through that oil. So now after this, drain the two plugs, drain both sides. There's some more contaminants. This is the oil. So now it's time to put the filters in. New filters, new O-ring on the caps. So your kit's going to come with a filter and an O-ring for each side. And just slip it over that cap like that. Now that spring, like I said, it goes towards the rear. And you got to make sure that filter goes in properly into that hole in the back. You'll see how far it I'm hanging up right here, and then it slips on back in there. You'll feel it. So let's do the other side. Notice how far it goes back right there. And then just carefully, make sure your O-ring's on there. And the old O-ring is off the case. Make sure you don't cross thread it, and just snug this up. Make sure those are nice and tight. Don't over tighten it, anything. And just snug this up with a 3/8 ratchet, hand tight. That's it. Now it's time to put the High Guard in it, and it ended up taking a full, like I said, 1.5 gallons. Now right here, I filled it up, and see that area right there? That little sloped area? I usually have to put a light. That's your gauge. Like here's your oil, TY6354. So it's gurgling on down. So while it's doing that, while I'm filling it up and letting it go on down. Takes a minute, just let it do its thing, and look at your outside hubs and make sure there's nothing wrapped around. Like this one had this stuff wrapped around. Now what'll happen is stuff gets wrapped around there, and it'll get into that seal and start causing that seal right there to start leaking. All right, so now I need to add some more oil. All right. So that gauge right there, you want the oil to be right there on that sloped area. That's the operating range, bottom to up right there. So you want it to be at the top of that. All right, so after you get it all filled up, crank it up. It's had time to sit. And don't be surprised if it doesn't move right away, but this one cranked up and started moving right away. And so what I was going to do is I'm going to let one of the younger guys go test cut with this thing. And I want to run it for just a few minutes and then check the oil again. And then I'm going to let one of the other guys, younger guys, go test cut with this thing for about 45 minutes. And I told him to get it really hot, just work it really hard, and then bring it back and let me or one of the other guys confirm that the hydro doesn't have any more issues going on. And once he did that, it actually, he brought it back, and I drove it around, and there was no more issues. So, and I want to double check, make sure after he ran it, check your oil level. It's hard to see through that neck, so I always just use a little flashlight so I can kind of see that oil level. So you can see the color difference there. That's the best way to tell. You don't want to overfill it. Don't fill it up to the neck.
So the customer got lucky on that situation. We didn't have to tear into it and do an expensive repair. Just changing the oil solved the issue. The guy went out and he got it nice and hot for me, and then he came back, and I drove it for about another 10 minutes, and it was pulling fine, no more noise. It pretty much resolved the issue. So he got really lucky there. You don't have to do the flush like I did in that situation. It was just all that buildup of debris that I saw that I wanted to just get all that out of there. And so if you're going to change yours, you don't have to flush it out with diesel and all that. That was just an extra step that I went through just because of all the stuff that I saw in there. I would recommend changing your oil. Some of them say 300 at first, the first 300 hours. Some say first 600 hours. Just depends on your model. I would recommend 300, 400, 500 hours, and then every 1,000 hours after that. But just, take a look at it, keep the oil, you're not going to have any issues if you, keep it clean, keep those filters. It's really easy to do, especially if you're not having to flush it. It doesn't take long to do. And just also one other thing, the oil that I used in there was the High Guard. Make sure some units use a low viscosity. High Guard is just a brand name for John Deere, the oil. Just make sure you're using the correct oil. And some of the standards, they actually use motor oil, like a 15W40. So just make sure you're putting the correct oil in your specific unit. So I hope this helps you guys out. If you're having, any whining or hearing any issues going on, or it's starting to lose power, just, maybe change that oil first, and hopefully that'll resolve the issue. And just one other thing I'll tell you, if you ever have your Z where you push it really, like the one side handle, like if you'll push it really fast and hard and it just doesn't move, but then if you push it gradually, it does, chances are the pulley on the hydro shaft, on top of the hydro shaft, is spinning. So some of them have a keyway that'll shear. I know these John Deere Z's don't, they're pressed on. But sometimes that top pulley, it will get a little worn out. And if you just all of a sudden, if you have your throttle full throttle, and you just go from neutral to all of a sudden forward just really fast, and it just does nothing, that's probably what's going on. But if you do it gradually, it pulls. It's probably stripped that keyway, or it's just slipping on that pulley on the hydro shaft. So I hope this video helps you guys out. I got more I'm going to post soon. Please like and subscribe, and feel free to comment. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next time.